thank you very much. So like I said, my name is Tim Frick, and I have a web firm in Chicago called Mightybytes, and we focus on sustainable web design. And I have a lot of friends who work in corporations, friends and clients, and they send me emails that at the foot of them in the signature, it says, please consider the environment before printing this email. And you know, to me, it represents something that's really interesting in that everybody thinks of the web as a green medium. And so, you know, saving paper is awesome. It's really great. But there's an impact every time you send an email. There's an impact every time you tweet, every time you update Facebook or Twitter or something like that. And that's something that we're often not thinking about as we're using all of these tools, as our last presenter was talking about the explosion of data that has come with sports and in the internet in general. So today I'm going to talk about electricity, the internet, and the carbon footprint that kind of comes along with that. But first I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory. I started thinking about internet sustainability when my company Mightybytes became a certified B Corp. Anybody know what that is? Yes? No? Okay. So certified B Corps are companies that use the power of business to solve social and environmental problems. So we all, there are over 1,200 of us globally. There are some brands you might recognize like Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's and some really great companies, Kickstarter. And these companies, like I said, use the power of business to solve social and environmental problems. We all go through a rigorous, very rigorous assessment called the B Impact Assessment. And it's a series of several hundred questions that grades your company based on accountability, transparency, some of the things Marianne was talking about earlier this morning. So we have profit, but we also have purpose. So we align the profit and the purpose to have a unified triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit. So the B Impact Assessment is a rigorous assessment that grades you on accountability, transparency, governance, social mission, and environmental impact. And so you go through this process and you answer all of these questions. And in the environmental process, or section of the impact assessment, a lot of the questions are about supply chain. And so my company builds websites, so we didn't really think that we had much of a supply chain. We thought, you know, we don't make goods, we don't import stuff from suppliers overseas or anything, but our supply chain is basically pixels, the people who build the website, and people, and then pixels that are there to run the website. But as we were going through that process and kind of looking through our environmental impact, we realized that every single thing that we make requires electricity to run. So when the power goes out, everything that Mightybytes has ever created in its 17-year history disappears, like just goes away, which is a whole mind block in itself. But the fact that it disappears and there's a huge amount of electricity that goes with that. So some of the client sites that we build get lots of traffic and lots of users, and every single one of those things require electricity to run. So we started thinking, how can we actually make websites more energy efficient? How can we make them more friendly for users? So it was kind of with that, becoming a B Corp, and kind of going through that process that we really started to kind of look inward and on what we do and really think about how we can apply sustainability to that, which not a lot of people are doing when it comes to the internet. Everybody's kind of thinking about it, like I said, as a green medium. So with that in mind, there's this thing called Jevons Paradox. And essentially what that means is that the easier something is to use, the more people use that thing. So more efficiency leads to more consumption. And so it happened with automobiles, it's happened with groceries and public transportation and all kinds of different things. It's the reason 7-Elevens exist. It's why there are Walmarts, why we have big box stores, all of that kind of thing. We humans love our convenience, and so Jevons Paradox is kind of the with the convenience up comes the use. So now Jevons Paradox is happening to the internet. It is exploding, as we heard. Convenience leads to widespread adoption and adaptation and innovation, which is awesome. Cheap broadband, inexpensive netbooks, smartphones and devices, they have all kind of led to this, you know, we all take for granted the fact that we have internet, affordable and accessible internet in our pockets at all given times. So right now, as of January 2015, there are 3 billion active internet users. And by the end of next year, it's supposedly over half the world's population is going to be online. So obviously there's going to be consequences with that because all of that, again, requires electricity. So last year, Greenpeace put out a report called Clicking Clean. which is this great report about where the internet gets its power from. And it was really awesome, and it talks about a lot of the companies that are doing various things to make the internet more sustainable, as well as companies that aren't doing anything. But one of the most mind-boggling stats to me in that report was, if the internet were a country, it would be 6th largest in electricity use, behind China, US, India, Japan, and Russia. Think about that. Like, that's a lot of electricity there. And only 13% of that energy in the United States comes from renewable sources. So 87% of our energy comes from fossil fuels. So if you kind of juxtapose the two of those against each other, you realize that there's a lot of carbon going into the atmosphere thanks to the internet. And then there's tweet farts, which is a thing. It's tweetfarts.com. It started from some guys that worked at Twitter, and they equated through their research that a single tweet and a human fart have the same common carbon impact. So, believe it or not. And as part of their research, in 2012, Twitter had 500 million daily tweets. So they estimated that one day of Twitter use was 10 metric tons of carbon going into the atmosphere for a single day on Twitter. If you take that and multiply it to the entire internet, including video, voice, cloud-based services, all that kind of stuff, it becomes 830 million metric tons of CO2 annually. So, and not all of that is from data centers. So the data centers are a big part of that, of course, but imagine if you've ever tried to book a plane ticket on your phone and the site isn't mobile optimized, and you literally spend 15 minutes what should take you 3 clicks to do. So a lot of that happens on the front end too, as well as in streaming video. Netflix, Hulu, Vudu, you name it, they're all huge. They play a huge role in all of this data going back and forth. And so with the current growth rate, we're going to be at 1 billion tons of annual carbon going into the environment every year very soon. So let's take a quick look at what that might look like. A single ton of carbon is about a sphere of about 33 feet wide. So you got a little guy up there and 1 ton of carbon. If you multiply that by the 830 million tons annually of internet carbon, you can actually go to the moon 22 times. You can stack those on top of each other and it'll go to the moon 22 times. And that's just the internet. That's not automobiles, the airline industry, skyscrapers, that's nothing. That's just literally the internet. So to build a more sustainable website, earlier this month, there's this thing called the HTTP archive that crawls the website and takes stats on all of it. And they found earlier this month that the average website or web page breached 2 megabytes for the first time in the internet history. So, a single web page, imagine loading that on your phone. Video backgrounds, retina images, rotating carousels, all of that stuff, contributes to this idea that websites have become bloated, they frustrate users, and they waste energy. So we at Mightybytes came up with 4 principles. We basically took what is a standard sustainability process called a life cycle assessment, and we applied that to building websites and said, how can we make these websites more energy efficient? So we identified 4 principles in our process that we said, hey, we could probably do something about this. And some of them are just regular best practices, but some of them are kind of like thinking differently about how you actually build a website. So the first one is findability. How quickly can people find your website? How quickly can people find the content on it? Do you have a search on your site? That kind of thing. Second one is usability. Can users find what they need? Can they do the tasks that they need to do on your website quickly and efficiently? A practical application of this might be a mobile-first strategy using responsive design, so something is optimized for devices and platforms, not using Flash, that kind of thing. The third is performance optimization. So in other words, how small can you get your web page? Can you make the smallest possible web page with the least amount of server calls so that it is streamlined and downloads in like a second or less? The fourth, and probably the most important one, is your website hosted by 100% renewable energy? Are the servers that power your website, are they run on renewable energy? So we started building websites this way in 2013, and it's been great, but it's not been without its challenges. We've tried to, a lot of our clients are environmental organizations, and so they get it. They look at this stuff and they're like, oh, okay, cool, we can apply that. But there's a lot of our clients who are like, what? Are you kidding me? And some of them, you know, one of the biggest challenges we've had is with green hosting providers. We've gone through about a half a dozen in the last 2 years because of customer service issues, reliability issues, and that kind of sucks because we want to be able to recommend these organizations to our clients, and we can't because we're having problems like one after another after another. So in order to build a greener internet, there are a few things that we need to do. We need designers and developers to commit to these ideas and think about these ideas when they're building their sites and say, do I really need that, you know, image carousel on my homepage? We need to get better service and reliability from hosting providers. We just need that commitment from them. And then we just in general need more awareness overall. Just a few years ago, most of the major internet players weren't even thinking about this. They were all powered by powered by data centers that were powered by coal. And over the course of the last year alone, several of them have migrated over. Facebook and Apple have made a serious commitment to moving to renewable energy. Google has been carbon neutral since 2007, so they were way ahead of the game. But then there's still some like kind of stragglers like Pinterest and Twitter who have made no movement towards having a transparency energy policy or committing to renewables or anything like that. Just last year, up until literally December of last year, Amazon Web Services was in this, and they're huge for those of us who build websites. They're a huge hosting provider, really super convenient. They're like the Walmart of web providers, you know. So it's great and it's convenient, it's inexpensive, but it's also so far up until December of last year, they'd made no commitment to renewable energy whatsoever. So we really struggled with, you know, trying to use them because of the convenience factor, but also realizing that they're really part of the problem. So what we can do is we can get all companies that have data centers to commit to renewable energy. That's probably one of the most important things. It's a massive undertaking, but probably not as massive as getting oil companies to stop drilling for oil. So I think it's a doable thing. It's a big challenge, but there are a few things that we can do. We can create a formula for estimating a website's carbon footprint. Nobody's done that yet. So there's not a place that you can go and say, I'm going to put my website in and find out how much carbon it's emitting, just to get an idea. So somebody should do that. That would be cool. We should get better and more green hosts, and then we should migrate as many of our websites to them as possible. All of the websites that we go to every day should be powered by renewable energy whenever possible. And we should pressure the companies that are not already using renewables to migrate in that direction. So these are just a few of examples of companies that have not made any strides towards getting renewable energy to power their data centers. And finally, we should create more efficient websites using sustainable web design standards or, you know, at least efficiency and optimization standards. The root of this problem is not, it's all about cat videos, right? The root of this problem lies in where the internet gets its power. It's not about what people are sharing. Some people in sustainability circles would be like, oh, you should use less, and, you know, et cetera. As far as this, people are always going to be sharing cat videos. If there are cats, and if there's an internet, and if there's a camera, there will be cat videos. It's just a reality of the internet. So thinking about the root of the problem, what we really need to do is we need to band together and work together to come up with some solutions. And by making a few of these choices that I mentioned here earlier, we can actually move pretty quickly toward a cleaner and greener internet. So thank you very much.